Quick question. What does your nose have to do with freedom of speech? More than you think. Stay with me on this one. I spent most of my career as a product innovator, building products for a specific person, our hero consumer. Not busy moms 30 to 44, but a fictional Linda from outside of Houston with 2 kids, volunteers at her church, and her husband's a mechanic. We gave Linda a hypothetical seat at the table in every project team meeting. When we built for Linda, the product worked. When we watered it down to please everyone, it flopped. Winning products polarize on purpose. Exhibit A, Tide Simply, the bright yellow bottle that made Tide loyalists recoil while mid-tier shoppers felt seen. It was a love it or hate it strategy. Polarization told you exactly who it was for and who it wasn't. What's true for detergent is also true for jokes, television shows, and even ideas. Preference is not a public emergency. If something isn't for you, that doesn't mean it shouldn't exist. So when people in power start treating their preferences like universal rules, well, that's when my brain starts flashing warning signs. Yes, I'm comparing laundry detergent to democracy. I am getting on my literal soapbox for this one. So grab the hamper, check your armpits for downy freshness. We're sorting this one out. A case study on effective polarization. Let's dig into this detergent thing because Tide Simply is one of my all-time favorite case studies in effectively using polarization. Here's what happened. Tide decided to launch a cheaper detergent to expand its laundry dominance. Orange bottle Tide owns the top end of the market, so they launched a cheaper version, Tide Simply. And if you look at the reviews from Tide loyalists, it was a disaster. People hated it. They blasted it online. This doesn't smell like my Tide. It doesn't feel like Tide. I'm never buying this product again. And that reaction must have been music to the product team's ears because that was their whole point. See, their target wasn't existing fans. It was the people buying Arm & Hammer and other mid-tier detergents. Tide Simply was priced in the right zone, and its scent profile and big, bold yellow bottle aligned suspiciously like, you guessed it, Arm & Hammer. So when the loyalists tried it and ran screaming back to their beloved orange bottle, that was actually success. Tide was carving out a new territory in the laundry aisle without losing money by their current evangelists dropping down a tier and spending less money. They knew the levers that mattered, and for laundry, while we use our eyes in the aisle, we use our nose out of the dryer to evaluate success. Tide Simply was designed to be hated by current users, directly speaking, or more accurately, smelling like exactly what Arm & Hammer customers wanted. Alienation was 100% intended and successful. This is the mantra of the innovator. If everyone likes your new thing, you probably failed because you didn't stand for anything. Like doesn't change behavior. You didn't convince anyone to fire their old choice and hire your product instead. The best ideas are polarizing because they force a decision. You either lean in and say, yes, this is for me, or you push back and say, nope, not my thing. Just being okay leads a path directly to the discontinued bin. It doesn't matter if 99% of people absolutely despise your product. In a country of 330 million people, 1% still means over 3 million potential fans. If that's enough to keep your lights on financially, it's enough to justify your existence. The other 99%, their dislike isn't a problem. It's proof you stood for something in particular. So when you hear me say polarization is a feature, not a bug, that's what I mean. In business, culture, and ideas, trying to be everything to everyone guarantees you'll be nothing to anyone. So if polarized products are good for business, what about for society? From detergents to democracy. Our culture works the same way as Tide Simply. Jokes, shows, Substacks, YouTube videos, and late night hosts are all products too. Some people love them, others hate them, and that tension is exactly how choice is supposed to work. Just because something isn't for you doesn't mean it's broken. It just means it's maybe not your Tide. Your nose prefers the classic orange bottle. That doesn't make the yellow one invalid. It doesn't mean its very existence is offensive to you. It just means it's not designed for you. You're not the target consumer. The danger comes when people in power decide their personal preferences should be universal rules. When a president or regulator hints at pulling the plug on a comedian, they're not just disliking the scent of a detergent, they're using their power trying to yank it off the shelves for everyone. And this is where my American capitalist brain short circuits, because in business, we know polarization is healthy. It means your product is doing what it's supposed to, find its tribe. If sales are really terrible, economic natural selection takes care of rendering inferior products extinct. But when the government tries to step in and enforce its own taste, it becomes control. So the real question becomes, are we talking about genuine violations like speech that crosses a clear line into harm, or are we just talking about preferences dressed up as something more serious? So let's bring this out of the laundry aisle and into late night TV. The Kimmel FCC controversy. Recently, Jimmy Kimmel landed in the crosshairs of both the FCC and the president. Now, the FCC has actual authority to regulate broadcast content, but only in very specific cases like hoaxes that cause substantial public harm. That's the technical lane they're supposed to stay in. But here's where it gets interesting. The president jumped in, not with a legal argument, not with public safety concerns, but with ratings. I'll let you pause if you want and read the president's social truth comment. Think about that. Instead of, "This show violates FCC standards," the message was basically, "I don't like Jimmy Kimmel, his ratings are bad, and shutting him down could be profitable." Now compare this to Tide Simply. Imagine if the president went out and said, "This new detergent makes my armpits smell weird. People shouldn't be allowed to buy it." That's not competition, that's an abuse of power. And even members of the president's own party called him out. Ted Cruz likened the move to mafia tactics, saying on his podcast, "Nice bar you have here. Shame if something should happen to it." Mitch McConnell then agreed, saying it looked like something straight out of Goodfellas. You don't have to like Kimmel. You don't have to watch him. But treating a personal preference like a federal offense, that's a much more fundamental problem, and one facing our country right now. Because the moment we let government power drift into the realm of, "I just don't like this product," it stops being about rules and starts being about taste, and your taste could be next. As Ted Cruz said, if the government gets in the business of saying, "We don't like what you, the media, have said, we're going to ban you from the airwaves," it's dangerous as hell. Empathy for alien worlds. Polarization isn't something to fear. I love polarized products. They stand for something. They keep us from conforming to the same ideas, forgetting that we even have a choice. That sounds a lot like an entirely different system of government. Polarization is the natural outcome of living in a free society. If everyone agreed on Simply Tide, it would mean there was no real choice. Same with late night shows, YouTube videos, and politics. Dan Williams put it beautifully in a Substack post I read recently. He wrote, "Watching the Charlie Kirk Memorial, I'm struck by how extremely culturally distant I feel from this world. Everything about it feels alien. The aesthetics, symbolism, music, rituals, mythology, gurus, ideas, and norms. It feels like being exposed to the culture and symbolic universe of a distant tribe. If I reflect on this, it occurs to me that this feeling must be symmetrical, that they must view the kind of cultural universe I inhabit as similarly alien. And in a strange way, despite opposing almost everything about this political project, this reflection makes me feel more empathy for what that project must feel like from the inside." That's the heart of it. You don't have to like the other tribe's detergent, their late night hosts, their rituals, or their worldview. But the moment you recognize they experience your world equally as foreign, we open the door. Different stops being about right or wrong, correct or incorrect. They're simply different. And we can start from there to seek to understand. It's not about eliminating everything that isn't your preference because you see that there can be another perspective. Polarization doesn't mean we're doomed to fight each other forever. It means we have the freedom to choose. And the healthiest response to polarization isn't to eliminate the other side's options. It's about understanding their preferences, even if they're not for you. Because when the government starts removing other people's preferences, that precedent eventually comes for yours. And it goes way beyond laundry detergent and certainly beyond late night comedy shows. To paraphrase John Oliver this week in a sentiment that was echoed in Kimmel's return last night, it's not because comedians are important, but because they are not. If the government can eliminate choices like this based on preference, it can do a lot worse. A freedom of choice. The only real solution is breadth of choice and the willingness to accept that somebody else's Tide Simply might never smell clean to you. And that's not a problem. That's freedom. This obviously isn't about detergent or late night TV. It's about the freedom to live in a country where those choices exist, even if you personally can't stand them. Polarization is inevitable, and honestly, it's healthy. It tells us we're alive in a system that allows for difference. That my tide isn't your tide, and that my jokes aren't your jokes. And that's okay. Danger isn't even disliking something. It's when we decide our dislikes should strip others of their choice. That's when freedom gives way to control. So here's where I land. I don't need everyone to like what I like. I don't even need them to understand it. What I hope for is the humility to recognize that someone else's alien world feels just as real to them as mine does to me. And if we can hold on to that preference is not a crime, that polarization is not the enemy, maybe we'll remember what really matters. Not whether a bottle is orange or yellow, not whether you tune into Kimmel or Gutfeld, but that you get to decide for yourself. Because what's important isn't the show. It's that we live in a country that allows us to have the show.